Dalinar Kholin might be one of the best examples of leadership in all of fiction. Not because he always knows what to do, and not because he wins every battle, and definitely not because he always makes the right decisions. Definitely not that. But because he chooses, over and over again, to become the kind of person who should lead. Today we're going to break down what it means to lead like Dalinar, what we can learn from his greatest leadership moments, but just as importantly, what we can learn from the times where he absolutely blew it. So if you've ever wanted to lead with strength, humility, vision, and a willingness to face your worst mistakes head on, this one's for you. But first of all, there are potential spoilers for the first 5 books in the Stormlight Archive in here. I don't think there are any major spoilers for anything after Oathbringer, but if you haven't read through to Wind and Truth and you want to be extra careful, you may want to stop watching now. But again, I think it's safe if you've read through Oathbringer. But if you're still here, let's start with the first iteration of Dalinar, the Blackthorn. He was legendary in battle, unstoppable, strategic, ruthless. He inspired loyalty through sheer force of will and a healthy dose of terror. And at the time, this was his conception of leadership. Win battles, consolidate power, boom. Simple. And this is a fairly twisted version of leadership that we see all too frequently in the real world and unfortunately in the average workplace. Obedience, order, and control by any means necessary. And while that sort of strict style might work on the battlefield, it completely collapses if you're trying to build a culture without the constant threat of death. You can't unite people by just scaring them into silence and compliance. But even as a domineering warlord, Dalinar still showed some of his greatest leadership strengths. One of which is that he had a great eye for talent. Take Taleb. Taleb? Taleb? I don't know how to say these names, so I'm going to go with Taleb, the archer who shot him. And Dalinar thought that was pretty neat, so he just went ahead and recruited him. This is reminiscent of a real thing that happened with Genghis Khan, and Genghis and Dalinar share this trait. It doesn't matter if they're friend or foe, if you've got talent, they'll recruit you and earn your loyalty. And one of the ways he earns that loyalty is by leading from the front. In a video I made a long time ago, I talked about how Aragorn from Lord of the Rings does the same thing, leading by example, in a way that inspires trust and loyalty. If you're gonna ask people to charge into battle, you lead the charge. And oh boy did the Blackthorn lead the charge. In the real world, we often see this in the advice of don't ask others to do anything you wouldn't do. And Dalinar's pretty consistent on it. If he's gonna ask you to charge into the enemy lines, he's gonna lead the charge. And even as he develops, if he's gonna tell you to live the codes, he's gonna live the codes too, dang it. I'd argue that recognizing and recruiting great people, along with leading from the front, are 2 of Dalinar's greatest leadership traits. But what makes him a great character is that they also highlight his greatest weaknesses. Yes, he finds great talent and he brings them on board, but he doesn't really trust them. Well, he may trust them a little, but if things get serious, he still believes that he knows best and that he can do it the best. He belittles Elhokar. He dismisses Yasna's political genius. He creates a coalition of rulers, but still tries to make all the decisions, and he even bullies the Stormfather into submission when they disagree. It's a mix between micromanaging and just believing that he's the only one that can do it right. He always knows best, and it's one of the most infuriating things about him. He has a similar problem with the lead by example principle. He's great at getting out front and leading from the trenches, but he has a much harder time getting out of the trenches when it's time to. He wants to do it all, because then he knows it's getting done his way, which is of course the right way. But leadership by definition generally requires that you don't do everything yourself. And this isn't out of malice. He doesn't think that other people are incompetent. He just trusts himself so much more. And a lot of real life bosses have this problem, particularly ones that were skilled in the trenches, electricians, plumbers, engineers, programmers who got promoted for being great at that thing. But now that they're in a management position, they're out of the trenches. So now when someone on their team runs into an issue, it's so much easier to just swoop in and fix it for them than to take the time to teach them the skills they need to fix it themselves. Dalinar has all the markers of a high performer who was thrust into a leadership position that he had absolutely no training for. After all, that was always supposed to be Gavilar's job. But this is where the real magic happens, because he changes. And before we talk about those changes, if you like characters like Dalinar and Kaladin, who are flawed people that are doing their best to become better in an emotionally healing way, then you might like the sponsor of this video, the Portlock Trilogy. Now, of course, I'm biased, because these books were in fact written by my wonderful wife. But there's a reason that independent reviewers have called them a tale of transformation and triumph of the human spirit. They are full of the kind of deeply flawed but lovable and realistic characters that you enjoy from the Stormlight Archive. So check out the links in the description or go to katiecooper.com to find a new trilogy that I hope you enjoy as much as I do. Now, back to Dalinar. While his arc spans all of the books, it really all comes to a head in Oathbringer, which is quite literally Dalinar's book. Both the book that is mostly about him and the book he wrote in World. Oathbringer is his in every sense of the word. And it's where he really starts to recognize his weaknesses, take responsibility for his failures, and do things differently. He begins to listen, to reflect, to ask questions instead of assuming he already knows. He starts to lead from a place of purpose instead of pride. He takes full ownership of his mistakes, being accountable both for the actions and their consequences. And more importantly, he decides to move forward despite those mistakes. I don't know if I have ever felt as many feelings while reading a book as that pivotal moment in Oathbringer, when Dalinar accepts his failure, and with every opportunity to be free of the guilt and the blame, instead takes full ownership and declares, "You cannot have my pain. I will take responsibility for what I have done. If I must fall, I will rise each time a better man." That is leadership. And that is what every leader can learn from Dalinar. Because like all of us, he screws up a lot. He pushes people too hard. He struggles with control. He leans towards authoritarian tendencies when he's stressed. And sometimes in the pursuit of a generally righteous goal, he will bulldoze over all disagreement. It takes incredible courage to face our mistakes and take responsibility for them. But I think we would all much rather follow someone who screws up, owns it, and tries to make it better than to follow someone who is constantly trying to bury the truth. So what does it mean to lead like Dalinar? It means admitting when you're wrong. It means taking responsibility, even when it hurts. It means choosing the harder path because sometimes it is the right path. And most of all, it means refusing to let your past define your future. You don't have to be perfect to be a great leader, but you do have to be honest. You have to be accountable, and you have to be willing to grow. Because if Dalinar can go from war criminal to someone willing and able to bear the burdens of a divided world, then maybe we can change to become what we need to as well. If this gave you something to think about, maybe send it to someone who leads, or someone who wants to lead, or perhaps just to someone who needs to hear that you can make mistakes and still be someone worth listening to or worth following. And if you want more leadership breakdowns and life lessons from unexpected places, from fantasy novels to a weird rant about stairs, there's a big subscribe button with your name on it. Journey before destination. Let's go make the world a better place.